Hey y'all, I just got out of the gym. It's been a while since I made a longer than a 3-minute video, so I'm gonna make one. So today, today I was on the job site with every single generation, and what I mean by that was there was a boomer, there was an X, there was a zennial, there was a younger millennial, and then there was an older millennial. I think he's 38, and then there was a Generation Z, and then Generation Alpha, right? And so, anyhow, it's so strange that, I think nowadays the gap is shorter and shorter. What does it mean to be, like, in my case, a zennial, which is like in between a millennial or a or a Gen X? I could just say I'm one or the other, doesn't matter. But it's not, people are missing the point. It's like, oh, we had RoboCop, which is seriously one of the best movies, and we did have the best movies. We had this music, we had this and that. The point that everyone is missing is like the cognitive developmental psychology of it. And what do I mean by that? So like, you grow up, you're on a phone. Like, if you have a phone before you're even in high school, like access to internet, even let's just say you don't have a phone for that, like, there's pros and cons to that, right? Is like, when we had information, we either had to wonder when I was a kid, or we'd have to find out with confirmed sources or research, ask someone we knew, and even then that was never like foolproof. But nowadays you can just, it puts you in a position where you're so used to getting everything done, instant gratification. Like, you send someone a message, you call someone, you send an email, you look something up, you order your food online, you check the status of what you ordered on Amazon. Like, everything we have, it seems like we're getting more and more into control. And all generations, unless you're just a recluse that doesn't have a phone, fall into that. But again, the psychology, okay, I born in the 80s, early 80s, and obviously grew up in the 90s. But the strange thing was my parents, they listened to my excuse me, my mother, she listened to Elton John, Pink Floyd, that type of stuff, like 60s. My dad loved, specifically, I remember the albums he listened to. He didn't have many, but he had Metallica and Justice for All, Metallica, Master of Puppets, Iron Maiden Live, 1984, a few Rat CDs, and some LA Guns and Guns N' Roses. He loved the 80s metal, and I always have a special love for that. Nothing to do with him, but I just think it sounds amazing. But I wasn't actually born. Like, I wasn't actually listening to that when it came out. It was a few years later, and it shaped my perception, but it shaped my musical taste and stuff. So it's like, every generation is always referencing, usually behind, even now, and that's something we have in common. But there's a lot of things, again, that people miss. They just think, oh, we did this, we had better music, we had this and that. Well, if we had better music, doesn't that mean that Generation X, now has better, because they have our music and they could reference to it? It's not like there's a timestamp. It's not like if I was supposed to only, and there's people that fall into this like grunge music when I was a teenager in the 90s, and just stay with that. That was the best music, I thought. I actually don't think that, but I'm saying no. Everyone, when anyone hears the House of the Rising Sun, the Animals version, everyone loves that song. It's a great song, and it's like 60-year-old song, over 60-year-old song, timeless, as they say. And so anyone could enjoy that song. But it's like, what do you think? The old boomers, are like, you can't like this because you weren't there at that time. I'm sure some gatekeepers, but no one generally cares, right? And that's the thing we forget, is we walked to people's we used to have to walk to friends' houses and not even know if they were home, you know, and sometimes, oh, they weren't home. And so we got that journey from A to C, and the middle equation of B, this generation seemingly for the most part is missing out on it, and it's not their fault. They were handed these devices and kind of forced to adapt, and all of us were forced to adapt to these devices. Really, the only thing I use on this phone is text messages and YouTube. But I say that, but there's things I have to use. I have to use like my time clock for work and adjusting hours. I have a storage unit, gym, I think I counted 6 apps I have to have that you wouldn't have had 20 years ago. They would have given you a card or something, you know. But that's just kind of the world, so that's how we adapt. I mean, maybe it's actually kind of cool because now I don't have to carry around these keys or whatever, right? So that's a convenience. That's a progress, move forward, right? But if you're like, again, like 35 and under, maybe even 36 and under, you're not the same millennial as someone that's in their 40s and stuff, or late 30s. You're not. You had, unless there is people that just grew up in like a kind of like their childhood was kind of like mine. Like we didn't have cable, we didn't have the things that everyone else had. We had the old stuff, the hand-me-down stuff, so that put us in a different timeline, put me more in the Gen X timeline. That's why I kind of happily claim to be a Xennial. But someone like nowadays could be like that too, you know. They could maybe not have a phone and just be sitting in live with their grandpa. And I've met them. I worked in juvenile detentions with these kids, and they just have a VHS player, know all this old, you know, movies and music. And that's just kind of like, they did the same thing I did as a kid, but they just did it because they didn't have a phone, you know, which is really cool. But like, it wasn't like they made a choice, you know. I don't know if anyone does. It's pretty hard to live without a phone. It's not impossible, but it's pretty hard. You actually have to have like so many, it's a crazy thing to think about, but you have to have so many resources to actually live off the grid. You have to have more money to live on. Like, that's a crazy concept to think about. Like, living off the grid used to mean like you were frugal, you didn't need much, but now it's been made where it is terribly inconvenient for you to live off the grid without a phone. And like I said, on all these apps you're supposed to have, you know. And it's like, someone at your work yesterday went to talk about, he couldn't comprehend. He said, you don't have Apple Pay? I'm like, no. Should I? I guess I should. I don't know. It seems convenient, but at the same time, I have my debit card, and that's all I need, right? I know this video is kind of everywhere, but hey, this is my therapy session, my rants. But another thing I'm going to talk about with different generations. This generation are condiment freaks. Whoa, that's weird. That was random. I'm telling you, I eat with these people and I watch how much it's like they drown everything in ketchup, ranch, and mayonnaise in like excess. I know I say this, the pizza conspiracy. I swear to you, the first time I saw someone eat pizza and ranch, I was 17 years old. And so I think that was a crazy marketing thing, but that's another video for another day. But it's like, it's so weird. They cannot like just eat their food. Like, to me, I don't understand. Like a burger, it's grilled right. We had Culver's the other day. Culver's really good burgers, you know. And you know, I have to be careful and order mine with no condoms, because to me the grease on it is good, and the cheese and the lettuce is wet. To me, I think everything else is just getting in the way, and it's diluting the flavor. But like that there's an object lesson there with like everything being diluted these days, you know? Like we don't do things, we can't just like read a book. We have to listen to it audibly while watching TV and texting. And it's like, that's how I look at the kind of the food, with like just adding so much extra. We're doing too much. We're oversaturating everything. Music's oversaturated. Movies, they're at a weird point of movies where it's like they're doing it manual. They're doing it like old schools. You get that artsy feel, but then also adding AI and CGI, and it's like it's the same thing. It's like what's going on here? Movies are getting really, and I love going to the movies. I do it every Saturday. It's a tradition. Whether the movie's good or not, I don't even think it's the movies I care about. I just like being in the movie theater. It's a peaceful feeling, you know? It's like, I don't know. But that's a good thing I've brought back in my life, and you should find something like that. Something that doesn't require a phone. Something that, you know, if I'm going out to eat, anytime I've ever gone on a date with a chick, you would never see me pull out my phone. Whenever I've been in relationships, I've had chicks trip out. They're like, why do you always hide your phone? I'm like, what do you mean? I put it away. It's not like I keep it in my pocket. I put it on the table and I flip it upside down because it's a respect thing. You know, if I'm hanging out with you or whatever, that's what it is. Unless, you know, of course I was waiting for an important call or email. That's the exception. But people can't comprehend that. You know, I see the difference. You know, like, let me talk about the work on site. You had 3 guys. I mean, we had every generation. The boomer just sat in his car by himself listening to radio, like talk radio, and that's a very boomer thing to do, right? The older guy, the older millennial. I'm sorry. No. The younger millennial, the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, they were all sitting down eating their overly saturated, overly saucy, every sauce on every bite, hamburger and fries, right? While just looking at their phone like that, not even paying attention. But the Gen X guy, the older millennial, and me, the Zennial, we sat there and talked the whole time while eating, just BS'd around, talked something about work and what we're gonna do next and all that, and it didn't cross any of our minds to look at our phones. And that's just the difference. And people don't realize with being brought up with the phone, you know, people are saying social media is social media is doing a lot of harm, for no doubt, but it is also, there's a lot of follies in people that are being exposed. And that's a good thing too, as long as you don't become cynical and think that that's how everyone is and marginalize everyone in one category. But, you know, that's what makes I think Gen X, millennials and boomers, Zennials, I think that's what makes them, no one's better than anyone, but that's what makes them more stable, is more because we're present. We're not disassociated. We know how to be present. We don't suffer as bad from instant gratification. Even if we do have impulse control, we have had to practice delayed gratification our whole life. And it's good. That's good discipline. It's good for character. And yeah, you know, people are always like, I see these videos on that, and the people never bring up the fact that your life's going to be completely different if you grew up with this thing right here, you know? Your life's going to be completely different if you didn't, you know? And we mourn for nostalgia, right? We mourn for past, because why? Things were simpler. Yes, the world was simpler, but really the truth of the matter is the world was messed up then too. We just didn't have it in our face always, and we didn't see things for superficially for how they are. And now we see it everywhere, and it's all causing cognitive dissonance. It's like organized confusion is what it is. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know what the solution is to that. I think the solution is just be mindful and present. You know, it's kind of like that weird book, The Power of Now. It's actually a good book. There's some parts in the book that I disagree with, but for the most part, it's got a good premises on it, and it is very important that we still. This is why we're not communicating. This is why we have internet trolls, because people don't communicate anymore. People text now. You know, people don't answer their phones anymore. Like, they have the ability of seeing, oh, John's calling. I mean, think about the rotary phones. We didn't know who was calling until like later in the late 90s, when it would show sometimes, if we were like high class people that had a cordless phone. But generally, we didn't know who was calling, and now we do. It's just like, no, I'm gonna text them instead. But that's the difference. That's the difference right there. Is we're not we're not oversaturated. We don't put too much. Most of us don't put too much sauce. Like, we get a you know, I can't imagine. I go to a barbecue or some barbecue, and someone hands me a burger, and I just drench it in condiments, just completely alter it. I'm not talking about putting condiments in. I'm talking about drenching, saturating, where every bite is dripping. And I don't know what you're doing. Is that just food lubricant? I don't know. Anyway, rant over.